Jabari, thank you for joining
Bimma.
us. Welcome to the Claima Stories podcast presented by Vista.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming to Portland. You
course,
brought
man.
the snow with you.
Yeah. I woke up this morning, man, and I haven't been to Portland in a while, but when I woke up, I saw little snowflakes. And honestly, after being in Southern California for so long, man, that's nice to see.
That's nice to see.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
y'all got a little
Yeah, it's
snow.
wild now. It's snow, rain, hail.
Yeah, what's going on out there?
Man, I don't know. And I live close to the water, so we get all the
So you get everything.
water stuff,
Yeah.
and but yeah, it it never rains in Southern California. That
It's
was
being challenged this year.
Yeah. I don't know about that anymore, man. They might have to do a 2023 version of that song.
It's time somebody do a remix. You just threw it out there. It's gonna happen.
Hey.
Now, how long you been out in LA?
10 years, man. 10 plus, actually. Yeah, I was in New York before that, working, just hustling, living that, New York grind, and came out to LA in 2012. And yeah, been out there since. Did a little hiatus in Texas for a little bit.
Texas. We'll get into that.
Yeah. But yeah, man, LA has been home, and it's been really good to me.
That's dope, man. Now tell me, so I know you've been in LA for 10 years, but you were in New York before, but your folks had lived in the Big Apple and then also Columbus, Ohio, right? I think your parents had separated when you before you were even born, right?
Yeah.
But you got to spend time in these different pockets.
For sure.
How was that for you growing up?
Man,
how did that impression you?
Just having that, most of my family's from New York, so and all over, right? So, but growing up, it was I would get that New York experience, and my dad lived right outside the city, right outside the Bronx in Westchester County, and then my mom would kind of move wherever she needed to for just providing for me, right? So we did a little time in New Jersey, little time in New York, upstate, all the way upstate to Ithaca.
Ithaca,
and then
was up there?
Yeah, where it's really cold. And then to Columbus, Ohio. But I would always be switching around back and forth, and I always got this city and suburban experience because of where my families were at, So, it was I was in Boy Scouts in Ithaca, making model
fires.
cars, fires, you know what I mean? Learning how to tie rope and these type of things. I was skiing, it would be the only black kid that knew how to ski, but then I would go back to my grandmother's house in Harlem, and be experiencing the richness of, the epicenter of culture, black culture in New York, So it was just I got a lot of different experiences, and what it was doing was showing me how to move in any different type of environment with any different type of person, and I think that still rings true today with my friends, business associates, colleagues. I'm very comfortable no matter whom I'm with, and it kind of shows from my upbringing.
Yeah, I love that, man. You need I think it's great as a kid to be able to be exposed to so many different things when you're young, right? Because it's just it's shaping you. It's it's allowing you to be the person that you are now. Because so many of us, we're just operating out of stuff that we learned as a kid, right? Speaking of kind of some of the things you were kind of shaped by, I know you grew up in a household full of literature, full of prolific images of dope, incredible creatives. I think one of the ones that stuck out was Zora Neale Hurston, right?
Yeah.
Tell me how all of that information started to sink into you.
Yeah, just my mom was an educator, so she was a teacher for the bulk of my childhood. If she wasn't teaching, she was in the some academic department of a university, a school, college, and so she would, she had a poster of Zora Neale Hurston in the crib, or she would be read this W.E.B. Du Bois, you know what I mean? She would just have, she went to Howard, and her major was African American studies, so it was just ingrained in me
Yeah, it
from
was
a
a part
young
of
age.
day
You
to
know,
day.
yeah, for sure. Just like all of these amazing creators, but then also, you know, she was a dancer as well, so she, you know, loved that type of stuff, and you know, just like movement and music, you know. So like at the same time, while that was on the wall, I will never forget like just Erykah Badu's Baduism CD was literally just like, or Maxwell, you know, or just like just amazing music of the time was also being played and not just played but displayed.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
That was the
like,
thing, right? Because the artwork on a lot of art, you know, a lot of albums back in the '90s was like just beautiful explorations of creativity. And like I remember like the Baduism cover is insane.
I mean, it's just so simple, and you know, she's got the head wrap on, and everything was just like it was just beautifully done. And you know, fast forward, I mean, last year we had a festival in Atlanta, and Erykah Badu headlined it. I was able to bring my mom. My mom got to see, you know, Erykah Badu performing at her son's show, and grew up playing that music around me and stuff like that. It was really
How was that
amazing.
moment for you and your mom?
Man, it was surreal, to be honest. You know, because I think my mom has been to a lot of my live shows and events, and has seen my career progress from, you know, interviewing artists, making music documentaries, putting on big shows. And she's been able to sort of understand what was going on. But it just hits different when it's like, this is her one of her favorite artists, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
People that she really loves. And this is my son's thing. And like those two worlds are converging together. You know, and was able to have her in like the front row, and you know what I mean, dude, like, and she just, she lost it, man. It was a lot of fun, man, and that was just, for me, it's always been a bit difficult to explain what I do to family members.
It's tough, right? Because like a lot of times they probably don't come from that space, right? They don't come from a music background. Like they're not in these different clubs or you know, random places you end up finding different music in pockets. So to them, you might say, "Hey, I do these things," and they're like, "I don't get it. Like I don't get it until like I'm in it.
Until I see it."
Yes.
Yeah. And then when you can just see it, it's like they don't even see the behind the scenes of it.
No.
But they just see the final product, and then it's like all the explanation ceases.
You don't have to like do the whole like build up to try to explain it, which is gonna confuse them anyway. I had a similar experience. My mom came with us to we went to New Orleans last year to do a live event, part of Essence Festival.
Okay.
And my mom got to see me interview for the first time, and she got to see like the event come to life and all that stuff. And it was like, finally, I was like, I don't really have to explain this to you anymore. Like you kind of get it now. So I have to imagine that was a shared thing.
Yes.
You and your mom always have had, sounds like a really kind of tight relationship, and she's always kind of been pouring into you. What's the story behind like these extracurricular assignments or something like that she was giving you?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you know, my mom was just like, she was just heavy on, you are going to do a lot more than just be in school and getting good grades. You know what I mean? So it was like I said, whether it was Boy Scouts, whether it was skiing, whether it was, you know, like sports. I remember even just, I was always into music, always loved music. But she was like, you know, you're in high school now, you like basketball, football, all right, you know, join the team. I was on the freshman team in high school football, right? And I thought, you know, I was like, man, I'm running, doing these 2-a-days, these drills, you know, like something. But like when I'm running and we're doing 2 practices in one day in the middle of like Columbus, Ohio, and it's blazing hot, and I'm like, something's not right with like my chest or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, and she's like, all right, we're gonna go see what's going on. And I go to the doctor, find out my heart is a little bit larger than it's supposed to be, right? Wow. So I have like an enlarged heart. I was messing with my endurance. But at the moment I wanted to quit.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'm good. I don't need to do this. Let me focus on like my studying Jay-Z albums, you know, when I'm done with my homework and stuff like that. And she's like, well, we got the clearance from the doctor. You need to do this and that, but you're not going to quit. You're going to finish the season out. And I was just like, this is pointless. I'm not going to the NFL, Mom. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to college to do this. Like, why? I can actually be like studying more or something like this. Or I could be
something different.
And she was like, as long as you got the clearance from the doctor, you're gonna finish this season out. And I never really understood like, and I was like, I'm riding the bench, bro. You know what I mean? Like I'm not getting no playing time. I'm just like, so
like I'm just chilling.
Yeah, I think I got I think I might have got put in like 2 games. I mean, one game. I was a cornerback. Wide receiver hits a split on me. I slip, touchdown. Like I was a terrible player, but she was adamant about me staying in that program and staying on the team for that whole year. And at the end of the year, you know, she was like, "Are you happy that you stayed, or do you think you should have quit?" And I had learned so many lessons about team. I learned so many lessons about, you know, just like endurance and not giving up and seeing something that you originally committed to through. It's okay if you complete a task, but don't quit a task. Is really what she was trying to teach me. And it was stuff like that, man, that I think it just so impactful in how I live my life and run my business today.
You think that's the reason why, you know, when you approach things, you're not so easily giving up on them when you face adversity?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one thing to say, this is not working, let's not do it. But it's really just about like, are we giving it our all? And like, have we put forth enough effort to make a decision whether or not we should move forward or stop the thing. And I think that like, yeah, that's really what like some of those lessons were.
How do you determine that? Like, you know, how do you determine, and not for everybody else, but just for you, like how do you determine if you put in enough effort in here, like, all right, yeah, it might be time to like call it.
Yeah. You know, I think it's kind of twofold. Sometimes it's just a gut feeling where when you know something is getting traction, if something is working, like if this is working successfully for like 100 people, then like it's just about a reach thing now to get it working for 1,000 people. And if it's working for 1,000 people, I think I could get it to 5,000 people. And if it's working for 5,000, I could probably get 10, 20,000. And then it kind of just keeps looking like that. And so I think that from a sheer numbers perspective, that's how I look at things at first. It's like 100 people viewing something is different than like 100 people like commenting on something and asking when is the next one and asking, like then you know you have something real. Yeah. Anybody can watch something, but when it's like a bunch of people sharing something or a bunch of people saying like, oh man, when is this? And it may not be a lot, but it's enough.
It's enough.
So you know, okay, in my gut, this is going right. But if it just like, if you're doing something and it falls on deaf ears, there's no type of engagement, there's no asking for more of it, and you keep doing it and you're releasing it and you've committed like, 3 months to it, something like that, then I kind of know it's like, okay, guys, I'll tell my team it's time to move on. Let's do something else. And, you know, but oftentimes a lot of things that we do in the company now are really just this, like, we try to say, here's the runway, here's the ship time, this is the plan, and we are going to truly give this like a 3 to 6 months commitment. And if we see traction, let's keep going, and if we don't, you know, let's move on.
Let's move on. Yeah. Take me back into, you know, coming up in education and schooling. Like, what subjects did you sort of gravitate towards?
Yeah.
You know, it seems like you had a love of music, love of language. Like, where did you land in that?
English, no doubt, was like my favorite one, man. I think I had a teacher in high school that really, she knew how much I loved music, but she she just said, you know, I think you're gonna love Shakespeare. And when I started to look at the similarities between, you know, what some of my favorite rappers and musicians were saying and how they were putting words together and metaphors and similes, and seeing that done in, you know, like these play scripts, it was really just like, oh, I like this a lot, you know, and I like words, and I like how you can make people feel something with just saying something and no sight, you know what I mean? Like there's just I was reading these stories, and yeah, it felt like listening to music, but reading literature.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and that's why I just gravitated toward that, and I didn't particularly like writing papers in English, you know what I mean?
So you weren't running out of way to just review something.
I just love consuming it, you know, and even now I think like I do like writing, but I think I like writing because of how much I like reading. Yeah.
That makes sense, right? Because when you consume and it's starting to spark ideas here.
Yeah.
Sometimes the only way to really express that is to just get it out on something. It doesn't mean you're going to share it with anybody.
Yeah.
Whatever the case may be, but it just might be a part of your process.
Yeah, exactly,
right?
exactly.
And so you have this love of language and culture, and then somehow it starts to get transferred into like media and other different things. Like, what's the connection to you with those different interests? Like, how do those come together for you?
Yeah, I think really how it started is just being a fan of these things, right? It's like even today, right? I'm in the hotel coming here, and there's a coffee shop in the hotel, and the coffee shop has a witty name. It's called Press Release. And I'm like, I just want to say what's up to the person who came up with the name for this coffee shop. You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, so that's the same type of mental model that I had when wanting to speak with some of the artists that I love their music. You know what I mean? It was like when I got to Howard, I was just so enthralled in all this new hip hop that was coming out, and I was like, I just want to talk to these people. How can I do that? And so, yeah, I just started doing these interviews. I reached out to a website at the time, smokingsection.com.
Yeah.
And hit up the owner. Shout out John Gotti, and that's his name he went by. He's still big in the sneaker world. You know Gotti?
I need to take a look.
You might know him, John Gotti.
Okay.
He was like, yeah, I'll give you a shot, and I started doing phone interviews with artists.
Wait, so you didn't meet him?
No, I never met him.
You didn't meet him?
No.
And you were you just hit him email?
Hit him on email.
And then y'all did a phone call?
Not even a phone call, I don't think.
You just emailed, and then he connected you.
I emailed him and I said, hey man, I'm in I was studying advertising, but it was in the journalism department of my school. And I was like, if you allow me to put the interviews on your website, I can get the interviews. You know what I mean? And he was like, all right, sure. And I had maybe done some interviews. I think I might have sent him some assignments that I had in class or something. And yeah, man, he really was one person who gave me my first shot in the entertainment industry. And so I think he set up an interview, or maybe I said it, I can't remember, with a music video director named Jawan Lee. And then after that, I think I interviewed Fabulous right after that.
Really?
Yeah, and I was a huge Fabulous fan. Huge, massive.
Yeah, Punchline King.
Punchline King, man. Yeah, just he was just, bars. And interviewed Fabulous on the phone, and I was like, after 20 minutes was up, I was like, I can't believe I just talked to Fabulous.
You just talked to Fabulous.
You know what I mean?
Now I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
Because you just said you're a huge fan of Fabulous, and at this time period, what year?
This is 2005. 5.
Yeah.
6.
So we're still dealing with Fabulous with the paper towel bandana.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so he's massive. Where does the confidence come from? Like, did you at any point feel like, oh wow, should I be doing this, or like, am I the one to be doing this, or like, were you just so in tunnel vision of like, this is what you want to do that you didn't even think about that other stuff?
Yeah, I didn't think about having confidence. I think maybe it was just really instilled in like my mother. You know what I mean? Like, and just I think she just made it clear from an early age that I could just do the things that I wanted to do. Nothing, even, in high school or, just, I was like managing artists in my high school, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, but it never seemed crazy to her or me. And I think that gave me this, like, for lack of better words, audacity, because I was, 19 years old doing these things when I was interviewing Fab. And I was like, I wasn't good, you know what I mean? But I just thought that I should be doing it.
You're doing it.
And it was, I would have to say that is a result of the confidence that was instilled in me by my mother.
Yeah.
For sure.
And you would take that and somehow start managing artists?
Managing first.
You did managing first?
Yeah, managing in high school. And then doing the interviews and stuff in college. Yeah. And that was a roller coaster.
Tell me about this. So how in the world you get into managing artists and
Yeah, so I mean, I had 2 friends in high school that were amazing rappers. I mean, just like crazy. And again, being such a big Jay-Z, Rockefeller fan, I was like, I want to do not what Jay does, but I want to do what Dame does. And like, I saw Dame Dash, and I was like, that's like, whatever he's doing, I didn't know what he was doing, but I just knew that he was behind the scenes, but in front of the scenes enough so that you could know that he's a part of what's going on.
But he's still
and I just like tried to research, and this is when early internet, so I tried to see what whenever he was doing an interview, I tried to pay attention and those things, and I was just like, I would tell my 2 friends, I was like, you guys are the rappers, I'm gonna be the Dame Dash of the situation. And some of the things that I was doing back then was just like burning a bunch of CDs and putting them into like local hip hop clothing stores. You know what I mean? All these like we had one store called, I think it was called Hip Hop Fashions, literally. You
gotta love the names from like early 2000s.
For sure. And I mean, we used to go there and get the Aniche velour suits, back when those platinum jeans were popping, you know what I mean?
Hella stuff.
Yes, all that. They had the Nike account that was like, not everything, like they would get stuff that like wasn't in Foot Locker, you know what I mean? So like it was like a little higher type of tier, and so we would go there for that stuff. But I would go there and drop CDs off. I'll go there and hang out. I'll go there and just make sure that our music was playing in the store and that type of thing. And I just learned a lot of early on boots on the ground, guerrilla marketing tactics when I was 15, 16 years old. And then I would, try to get our music on the radio. And I would, like, when there would be bigger and larger events in the city, I would try to get us to open for those things, whether it was like a fair or whether it was just like all these different types of events, another artist coming to the city that might have catered to like a younger demographic. The manager of that store and a big DJ in the city, like, took me under their wing. So I kind of had these connections, you know what I mean?
At a very young age.
Very young. So I came in the game at Howard when people
already
were like
in the mix.
Starting their
people
career.
are starting to starting to learn about promoting, starting to learn about putting on events.
Exactly. Starting to learn about starting to learn about who they are. I had a clear understanding of who I was and what I wanted to do. And that's even the reason I went to Howard, because I was like, oh, well, Diddy went here, Taraji P. Henson went here, you know, Debbie Allen. I mean, all these people, all these like, I was greats. Just like, people who were in entertainment had gone to this school. And so I was just like, I got to go there because I'm trying to be in entertainment.
Because you're trying to be in that space, in that world.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you would continue to build those bridges into doing so. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is as you started to get into producing live shows and events, you also had this huge interest in content, right? And like in being a part of media. When you think about content today, there's a lot of content that can kind of just be a distraction.
Oh, for
right?
Sure.
Like there's a lot of stuff out there. Being someone that's been rooted in literature and mentored far and closely from Howard alums and things of that nature, what's the filter that you kind of look through or you hope to see out there when you're like, this is why this needs to exist?
Yeah. I think it falls into buckets, right? So there's there's some stuff that's just you're scrolling and it's like eye candy, you know? It's just like, I saw somebody get hit with a weighted blanket the other day and it was just hilarious, right? Now, that content, it's good content because good is subjective, but like if a lot of people like it and a lot of people watch it, you can't deny it, you know?
Right. It's clearly something people want to see.
Exactly. Now, I didn't learn anything from that. I wasn't entertained and educated at the same time. I was just entertained. So I feel like that's just the eye candy, easy stuff. Then there's the edutainment, which falls in a different bucket, right? And there's that's where I'm retaining some information, and it's also like displayed to me in a way where I don't necessarily feel like I'm reading a book, or I don't feel like, the information is not easily digestible. And I think that that's the hardest type of content to make, right? And then there's just the pure educational stuff, right? So there's like 3 buckets of content. But I think that to be entertaining and educating is like extremely difficult. And I think, but when you make that kind of content, there's the most value in that kind of content,
because you're getting the best of both sides.
Exactly. And you will you're gonna find like higher CPMs on that type of content. You're gonna find you're gonna be able to like put a subscription model behind that kind of content. You're gonna be able to do a lot of stuff, but everybody can't make that content. That content is really difficult.
It's really it's definitely. Some people find that sweet spot, right? And it takes years. Like it might take someone who has been working in the music industry since they were like 15, 16.
And I haven't gotten everything,
right?
Yeah.
But and to your point, what you just said, you hadn't gotten everything, but you still are a work in progress, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's a part of this too. Is like from a process standpoint, like you're never really done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like you're always in a place where you can learn, add more. Learn from others, younger, older, whatever the case may be. In your journey after school, after college, I'm sure you had ideas of where you wanted to go. I'm curious to know where you wanted to go and what was more of the immediate thing that kind of landed.
Yeah, for sure. So, when I was in college, I was really focused on this interviewing thing, and I was one of the first people to interview, and I say one of the first, because I don't really always like being the first. I let somebody
You want
else,
them to get their reps in.
Yeah. But I was early on interviewing like Nicki Minaj, Justin Bieber, and they would, when they spoke with me, they were at a certain level. Then I would interview them, and it would take off online, something like that. And then 6 months down the road, boom, superstars.
Right.
And so I took a lot of pride in finding talent early on. People on MySpace and being like, I gotta talk to this person. You know what I mean? And then I'm gonna talk to them and not saying that my interview was the thing but it was like I caught them at a certain time. You caught them
at a space and you were able to help them get to wherever they were going.
Yeah, it was a small piece in telling the story that was already gonna be told without me or not. And so at that time, I'm getting closer to graduating, and it's like 2009, and I'm thinking that, okay, I don't want to just do this on YouTube, online. YouTube is not what it is. Like, now kids want to be YouTubers.
Yeah, you just want to be YouTube,
yeah,
period.
it's like, I want to be a YouTuber. I was like, well, I'm not on TV, so I have to put it on YouTube. You know what I mean? Like, nobody wanted to be on YouTube in terms of a professional career. Like, you, at that time, you wanted to be on traditional media.
Right.
That was still, but it was also this like weird time when traditional media was dying out and digital media was becoming what it is today. And so for me, I wanted to be like hosting 106 in Park. That was
word.
That was the goal, really. I was like, all right, I'm doing these interviews. I want to do them on a larger scale. This is the place to do it. And I got really, really, really far in the audition process.
Oh, so you really went into
I was
the
in.
process. Okay.
I was in for sure. I was meeting with BT executives. I was, I was in New York in the studios. Like, I had sent in an audition tape from school.
Yeah.
Then they brought me up to New York. Yeah. Then I did all this and that. And then I think Bow Wow ended up getting a final slot.
Wow.
And at the moment, that crushed my soul.
Yeah, I was gonna say, how did it feel? Because you have to imagine, like, you're putting so much energy into that.
Yeah.
And you seem like a person that's pretty grounded.
Yeah.
But it seemed like it did shake you a little bit.
Yeah, it shook me but it was another lesson. I realized that, I think 2 lessons. Number one, I wanted to be in control of the direction in which my career went. I don't really want to be in any sort of business where I'm needing to convince someone to give me an opportunity. The only people that I want to convince to give me an opportunity is my customers.
Yes.
Right? Like, that's it.
That's it.
I need to be convincing people on how to spend money with something that I've created. I don't want to be, because the other road is going to lead to disappointment over and over and over and over again, because you may not be a fit for somebody else's idea, right? Like, I think that I would have been a great host of 106 in Park, but the executives over there didn't, and that's fine. But if I were to continue down the type of path where I wanted someone else's approval in order to further my career, there would have just been a lot of more heartache and a lot more pain and devastation and disappointment. And so immediately I decided, this is not for me, and I'm going to just continue to keep doing my own thing.
It's interesting that you learned that lesson that young and after that one particular time. Yeah. Because so many of us continue to put ourselves through that type of pain where you're trying to fit into someone else's vision versus just being your own vision and following your own path. Because ultimately, you got to shapeshift to try to fit into what someone else wants versus building it yourself. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that building it yourself is the easy route.
It's not easy,
right? It's not the easier route. No. But it is the route where you could be comfortable being yourself. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so it's interesting that you shared that. So what happened next then, right? So you've identified, like, this ain't it. Yeah. Thank you. You learned a lot of the process, but you really wanted to have control over where you were going to go.
What happened next is really what happened next is the recession.
Yeah. That was real.
So I was, man, this is a very low point because I had graduated. I had this sort of, I've been known on campus for doing all these cool interviews, and everybody knew that, when we graduate, Jabari's definitely getting a job somewhere. Everybody's like hurting from the recession, but everybody's like, oh, well, you've been doing this since we got to Howard, so we know, you got it. You're gonna be good.
You got this expectation on you.
Yeah, and at the time, I was with my girlfriend at the time. I was living. She still had one more year to go, and I was living with her and 2 roommates, and just like bumming it, man. I didn't have nothing to do. I was in the house from sun up to sundown, sort of looking for gigs and jobs and stuff like that. And I just fell into a little bit of a depression because of what we're saying right now. So much expectation from my peers, from my fellow classmates, my students, and my other students, and I thought that, I was going to be doing this thing, and now I can't even find out. I know I want to take my own path, but I can't even I don't even know what the next step is in that. And the girlfriend at the time broke up with me, kicked me out of the apartment, and I had to go to my dad's and live in the basement at his place. And it was where then it was like I had already been out of my parents' house, right? And I hadn't really lived with my father for an extended period of time outside of like the shipping back and forth during the school year. And so I was just like in the basement, and this is why this was my rock bottom,
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, was this like this was like, wow, this is like really bad.
Yeah, because I wanted my independence. You know what I mean? I was like, when I went to college, I was independent for the past 4 years. Now, I never thought that I would be coming back. You know what I mean? Some people are fine with that, going back to their parents' house and, having that reset time. But for me, that was something that, like, the minute I left my mama's crib, I was not trying to come back.
To my
mama's crib or my dad's crib or nothing. You know what I mean? Like, I'm out of here. So I stayed there for about 3 months, and that's when I found this one gig at Capitol Records. That was like, it was like a social media sort of like content creation.
Was this thing. Like 2010,
this
11?
This is 2010.
Yeah. So this is this. I remember this because this was the time where those roles didn't exist.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
And it was the change that was happening because Facebook was starting to modernize.
Yep.
Instagram was just coming online.
Yeah.
Right?
Instagram came
or if it was
a little bit later.
Low-key, it was like Instagram, I think it was 11.
Yeah, something like that. 11, maybe
really
12.
Facebook and Twitter, and then there was some other stuff that I can't remember right now.
Yep.
Right? And so it sounds like you kind of found a pocket.
Yeah, I found a pocket because I remember this was this site Mashable was posting jobs, and I was like, it was all these tech jobs, but there was like a few like digital marketing things, and I remember Capitol had posted this job that they needed, somebody in New York entry level, and nobody had this role before. And I remember this so vividly. I came in, I pulled up my YouTube channel, and it had a bunch of interviews on it. And I said, hey, this is what I've been doing in college for the past few years. And I was like, I know you see me in front of the camera, but like I can, do these like things for the artists that are on the label. I could get behind the camera, and I know how to run Twitters and Facebook pages and that type of thing. And I just like gave them a brief pitch and showed them how I was able to get these videos to these view counts and that type of thing. And I got back on the train going back home, and they called me when I was on the train, and I was on the Metro North, so it was like that train is outside. You get service on it. So
I was curious. I was like,
yeah, they called me on the train, and they were like, hey, we'd like to offer you the job. And I was like, they were like, when are you available? I said, when are y'all available?
When are y'all available?
You know what I mean? I come
I'm ready
tomorrow.
to go.
And so, it was like, I think I came in the next week, and this role was so new that they took a regular office and they had 3 kids, like fresh out of school. It was me, Matt, and another woman named Amy. And they put us all in like one office and like put desks in, like, so it was like me and Amy on one side, Matt on the other side. We were in like a one-person office, and they were like, yeah, y'all are gonna go in here and just like handle this stuff.
Right,
so
they probably
like,
call it this stuff. They had no idea like, what it is.
What? And so, like, I was like, all right, guys, like, I'm gonna kind of take over the video side of stuff. You know what I mean? I'll do a few things here and there. I think Amy was handling more of the Facebook stuff, and then Matt was supporting various things, maybe some email, and and we were all in there working on like, 3 kids working on social media for like an entire record label.
Which is crazy for them not to realize that y'all are now the direct front line of defense. In connection to the audience.
Yeah, for sure. It was wild. And I mean, this is at a time when, you know, certain artists got it, right? I remember, you know, one of my first projects was Priscilla Renee, which is, this is so ironic how 360 things are, but Priscilla Renee was a singer-songwriter. She was a young girl and was just super talented, but, you know, hadn't really cracked through. And we were trying to come up with some campaigns and stuff like that. And ultimately, her career didn't really shake out as Priscilla Renee, but Priscilla Renee went on, and she is now who we know as Money Long. And
wow,
that was my first project, first thing, right? And it just is so dope to see her now. Yeah. You know what I mean? And what she's but that's how long it takes sometimes.
It takes some.
You know what
I mean?
It
time.
really
it's not
takes
an
time.
Instant. It's not always an instant hit for a great majority of folks.
Yeah.
It is years and years and years of work.
Yeah. Another one of my early projects was Cali Swag District, which Teach Me How to Dougie. Helped get that song to spread virally and, you know, go on to sell like a few million units of that record. And then it just kept like, I did some work on Snoop, did some work on Katy Perry, did a bunch of stuff, and I started to like really get a knack for marketing content and music online. And so at the same time, I'm still doing my interview thing. I had like a side gig. So the BET thing worked out because they didn't give me the 106 thing, but I ended up getting like a digital series with them.
I mean, that's still dope.
It was still,
like,
for sure.
Opportunity, yeah.
And it was called Face to Face, and I basically interviewed a lot of the artists on the come up before they went on 106. So at this time, I'm still working at the label, but I'm interviewing Mac Miller and putting him on the BT digital series before he gets to a popping where everybody knows him at. J. Cole, put him on the first like thing he ever did with BET. I interviewed him outside of my boy's Commonwealth store in DC.
I remember Commonwealth.
You know, so like it's like stuff like that was happening around this time, where I was getting the best of both worlds. I was getting that corporate environment and understanding how to move in a multi-country company, but then I was still doing my entrepreneurship thing, and I had my independent contractor relationship with BET.
Yeah. So how did that feel for you? Did it make you feel like you still had something of your own? And
definitely.
You didn't feel like you had like completely just been consumed by
it? Yeah, definitely. And I mean, there were a lot of challenges at Capitol, right? Like, because at the time, you know, us three, we were the youngest people working there. And like there were interns that were there and older than us.
Oh,
so
wow.
Yeah, it was you know, and then when you talk about like my job in video, I was having to travel a lot, and I was having to I was taking my guys that I was working with on projects personally, and I was saying, hey, come to the label and we got to shoot this thing on the West Coast with a new artist. But like politics of the label and stuff like that, they were doing stuff like not giving me a corporate card. You know what I mean?
So how were you paying for expenses?
I was paying for it out of my check. You know, I'm making $30,000 a year at this point.
Yeah,
you know?
You're not making anything.
So I was paying for it out of my check and having to get reimbursed for various things. So it was like, imagine like camera rentals, this and that. Like I'm having to pay for this stuff on my own, and then go do a form, send it in 90 days, and then the money's not coming back in the reimbursement, and then something messes up with the reimbursement, and then I got to go pull all the receipts.
Again.
And I'm like, this could be alleviated. Y'all just give me a corporate card. But it was like, it wasn't, there hadn't been a precedent set for giving somebody at my status in the company at an entry-level position. Like, those people just didn't get corporate cards. And so that was like when I saw the politics and rules of a large business and how I didn't really want to be in that system either. Right. You know, it was really dope because I took that experience as a learning experience, but a lot of that stuff just didn't gel with
you.
What I was trying to do.
At the time when you're experiencing these different things, who was your sounding board, right? Like, are you keeping a lot of that information internally and you're making that decision just, you don't like it, you're making this decision? Are you bouncing it off anyone?
Yeah, I think I've met a lot of folks in, I have mentors and things like that, but oftentimes I'm in spaces I feel that people haven't been in before. So the job, for instance, was like, it was unique. It was like it was hard to bounce that off of somebody because nobody else I had known was in that position. Even if they were higher than me or something like that, they weren't doing the things that I was doing. And so I was kind of just internalizing it and figuring it out in my own head. But I will say, one of my big homies, his name is Dumi, and he managed an artist that I was working with at the time on the label Tiny Tempa. He's a big artist in the UK. And he was trying to break over here into the US. So we developed a really great relationship. Both of them are still my brothers to this day. And, there was an opportunity that came for me to go to the UK and make a documentary on Tiny, being the first British rapper to sell out an arena tour over there.
Wow.
But the label didn't want to pay for it. Or they wanted to pay for like a small portion of it.
And then they want to use like brand money, try to get a sponsor or something.
Yeah, they didn't want to do it. Oh no, sponsors, they weren't even thinking like that. they just were like, I needed to be over there for about a month to shoot this project, and they wanted to send me over there for about a week.
Oh wow.
And I remember at that moment I had to talk to Dumi, which was Tiny's manager, and I had to, I said, man, I really want to come and work on this with you guys, but the label's not supporting it. And so he said, well, we'll pay for it. But the label told me, and so I bring it back to the label, say, hey, they'll pay for it. But the label was like, well, we can't let you not be in the office for 30 days. Because again, it was like a precedent thing. It was
because
just like,
of what?
Exactly, right? So I'm like, and they're like, well, we've never sent somebody like at your level out of the country for that long and this and that. And so I said, well, they said they'll pay for it. And then they said, well, if that's the case, that's too long of like a leave. And I'm like, it's not a leave. I'm working on something for here. And they were just like, they just couldn't wrap their head around it. And they said, well, if you do end up taking it and they're paying for it and it's going to be their project, and basically you won't have a job to come back to. And so that's when I had to use Dumi as a sounding board. And he told me, he said, hey man, like, I'll give you enough to work on this. But, after that, you gotta, is this something, are you gonna go full down on this independent route? You got a good thing going, you got a job, you know what I mean? You love the job. But I'm supporting whatever decision you wanna make. But, and he gave me a lot of great insight as to the realities of leaving 9 to 5. He was like, don't just get up and leave. Like, have some sort of savings, have some sort of rainy day, and think about how are you going to continue the revenue coming in. And luckily, I still had that thing with BET. Yeah. So I was still had a money little coming something. In the door. Yeah, exactly. And so I thought about it for maybe 6 hours or something like that. I went to sleep, got up, and said, look, I'm about to go and tour the United Kingdom with an artist who is in arenas right now. Or stay at Capitol Records in my shared office room with 3 people and continue cutting these videos and making these marketing campaigns. I said, I'm going to the UK.
Wow.
And I quit the job, and went over there, went on that tour. It was one of the best experiences of my life. And that, to be honest, Bimma, is really how I even wanted to get in a live space in a serious level. Because I got to see it done at the highest level in another country. And I was like, you know, I need a piece of this live situation. I got to get involved somehow.
And so you did, in fact, do that, right? And so, like, today, you have your own event series that has completely just exploded. That focuses on the R&B community and the artistry of that music. I think we clearly established how you ended up getting into the live event side.
A lot of people wonder, like, how do you?
But that was beautifully the way you expressed it. I'm curious to know how you ended up focusing on R&B. What did you see as an opportunity in that space?
So I had always been because I have a lot of friends, know a lot of people. I love community. I love getting people together, and I love what happens, which I'm sure you do as well. You know, you meet so many people along this journey that sometimes you're just like, oh, you need to meet this person.
Yes.
And when y'all connect, I don't know what's gonna happen, but just tell me, and I'm happy to make the connection.
Yep.
So I love how the power of live events could do that. And so I used to have these parties, small parties, hip hop parties, and it was just the music I love, getting people that I wanted, and if I could make a little bit of cash on the side, great. And so I was doing that while I was in Capitol, and then when I went on the tour with Tiny, and then, you know, seeing Nicki's shows or seeing Macklemore bring me to certain shows or this, I mean, I was seeing these artists that I would see them doing like 300 seaters first or clubs, and then they have one record, and then I see like, boom, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, wow, this is crazy. And so I was bringing these people together at these various like small hip hop parties. And because I was bouncing around between New York, went to college in DC, was living in LA, I was doing these in 3 different cities. And so the parties at first were called Colors, and they were hip hop parties, right? So,
and what was like the format of the party? Like, what was actually happening?
So basically, this is again like, I want to say around 2012 to like 2013 to 2015, something like that, around that time, and then 2015 and beyond actually. So in those cities, there was a huge focus on people being excluded from one another, separation, VIP, this type of thing. So I was like, let me do something contrarian. And off the rip, I'm just gonna say there's no VIP at any of my events.
Oh, wow.
So, and you know, I would be bringing in celebrity friends and this type of thing. And like, you know, you may see some artist over here at the bar right next to a college kid, you know what I mean? And it's like, that's the type of energy I was bringing, like that's no dope. Sections, no separation. And I wanted to focus on, you know, inclusivity versus exclusivity. But, you know, those parties were all focused around hip hop. And at the end, I would just want to switch it up a little bit, and we would play R&B sets at the end. But as I started like building that trust with the community, everybody knew it was going to be a good time. They started to also understand what the flow and format of those parties were. And so what happened is people started coming like for the R&B sets at the end.
Oh, wow.
I was
so
like,
they're just coming later.
Yeah, and they were coming like, and I was like, you know, because it would be like the last hour and a half. And I would host the parties. I would get on the mic and be like, all right, we about to slow this thing down, get into some R&B stuff. And I'm talking about like, man, the women would rush to the front, you know, like a bunch of girls would come in at this time. And I just kept looking. I was like, man, when we do these R&B sets at the end, they are going crazy. Like, they're going crazier than like, I mean, the hip hop stuff, we can only jump up and down to like
so
Lil Uzi Vert so much, you know what I mean? And I was like, so one day I just stopped the music, turned the fader down, and I was like, hey, if I did a R&B only show, would y'all come? Crowd erupts, like goes crazy. It's in LA. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I mean, again, I didn't think about this in some grand way or you know, really have like a business plan modeled out. I was literally having these parties, stuffing $5,000 in a bag and putting it in the bank, and I was like, hey,
cool,
this is great. You know I got paid. Like, you know, but when I said would you guys come to this R&B thing? And then I literally said, if I did an R&B only show, would y'all come? And everybody cheered. And I was thinking about, I was like, okay, I gotta do something R&B. They all said R&B. They said they would come. And I was like trying to think of a name, and I was like, well, you know what, it's just gonna be a pop-up. So I called it like Tonight. Like, and I did like a pop-up. It's like Tonight, and I said Tonight, R&B only. This tonight it'll be R&B only. And then, man, like 300 people came to that. And then I was like, oh, this is crazy. So then I said like, all right, let's just like maybe take the Tonight off. Let's call it R&B only, do it again. Then boom, like 400 or 500 people came. And I had to like move the venue. And I'm like, okay, boom, 800 people come. Now, at the third one.
This was all in the same city?
Same city. This is all in LA at first. More people are coming to the one, like to the R&B thing than are coming to the hip hop thing.
Oh, so you were still doing them in tandem?
Yeah, I was still doing them. At the same time. So, and again, Colors was just a party, right? It wasn't, so, and it's like, and I'm trying to like find, and I'm like, okay, I call it Colors, R&B only, like this and that. And so then I'm just like, wait a minute. Like it gets to the point where it's like 1,000 people are trying to come to this thing. And only after like 4 or 5 shows. And I'm like, okay, first off, I got to make this thing not into like a party. Number one, I got to turn this into a show. I have to really think about like how to section this out, how to develop a run of show. And I just had all this inspiration from going to concerts so much. Exactly.
What were some of the things that you started to like borrow?
Oh yeah, for sure. Call and response stuff, for sure. Like just stuff where I'm intentionally telling some sort of story, but we're bringing the music down and I'm getting the crowd involved. Then I started to invest a little bit more in production because I would go to a lot of electronic music shows. So EDM was huge.
And the investment is
and I was like, man, these guys are DJs. You know, they're producers, but they're DJs as well. And when you come and see a show, you're seeing a DJ, but there's all this stuff going on, like lights, LED, whether it's, you know, pyro, whether it's CO2, it's all this stuff happening. And I was like, I need to borrow this and put this in my culture. And that's really when I started to do that. And at first I started to try to go to venues that had that stuff built in. Then I started to rent some stuff. But I just said, man, you know what? Make this thing a show, make it a production, have some sort of storyline going throughout, develop that, and turn this party that was called Colors into a company that produces R&B only. And then if I have another idea, we can keep producing stuff, but Colors will be the company. So I changed the name from just Colors to Colors Worldwide because I wanted to think global.
You wanted to be
but
global.
Also I was renting venues, and I was renting venues from Live Nation, and on the contract said Live Nation Worldwide. And I was like, oh, they're worldwide.
They're worldwide.
I'll be worldwide. You know? So I said Colors Worldwide. And then I was like, everything is gonna fall under that umbrella. And then I was like, let me get the trademark for R&B only, do the branding for that. And you know, little did I know, even at that time, I didn't know that I was still thinking about R&B only as just a event.
You weren't thinking about
it as a brand
with multiple pillars and layers.
Exactly. And so
when did that switch?
That switched when I started to do shows in multiple cities that I was never in before. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna take R&B only in the 3 cities that we're in, right? I'm gonna do New York, LA, and DC, and all places where I have roots in. But one this is so funny, but we had a DJ with us that was he was DJing a Carnival cruise, right? And this is like, now we only have female DJs. It's a whole nother thing, but at the time, this DJ had to go and DJ a Carnival cruise for like 2 weeks or something like that. One of these, like, no, it wasn't Carnival, it was Disney. Disney. Cruise. That's what it was. And so he's like, hey, I'm gonna be out for a little bit. I gotta go to Orlando, and I gotta but the ship docks in Orlando. I'm coming back. Boom, then I can get back to work.
Yeah.
So me, I'm like, all right, well, you said you're gonna be in Orlando. That means I don't have to get you a flight. I don't have, like, if we did something in Orlando, I only got to get you a one-way back home. I don't have to get you a round trip. So I was like, all right, well, if we're gonna expand, let's expand to Orlando because we can take the cost down. And so I did a show in Orlando. I booked the venue, did a show, and I realized I could run the same sort of marketing play, and I could use Facebook ads, but I just switched the city. And once my mind was just like, I was like, whoa, Facebook ads are like this. Like, I don't know anybody in Orlando. I don't have to do it, but I just learned the Facebook ad ecosystem, and I was like, well, I can just type in this city and apply it there. And I was like, oh man. And I was like, you know, I mean, I'm like a solo founder, so I didn't have anybody to talk to. But I was just like, I said to myself, you can run this play in the whole country. And that was it. And now we're in 50 cities in North America.
You're in 50 cities now.
50 cities.
How long did it take you to go from LA to 50 cities? Minus the pandemic years.
Yeah. Well, if you take away the pandemic, 3 years. If you take away the pandemic, yeah.
And then at what point did you start to add people to the team? Because I imagine you started by yourself, and you can only do so much.
Yeah.
Right, and then you get to 50 cities, like there's a lot that starts to happen.
For sure.
So how do you start to flesh those different things out?
Well, number one, it was a educational process that we still have to go through to this day. So number one, there are like a lot of pillars here, right? So I had to attract people that understood that we are not party promoters, right? We are not throwing a party. Like, this R&B only live is a show. And number one, you have to understand that element first before you could even join this team. And we had to educate our audience on that, and then I had to educate like employees and staff on that as well. So always just treating it as such, and run of shows, storytelling throughout the experience.
How does that show for you, the storytelling part?
Storytelling is, we are trying to take people on a journey of R&B music from past to present. And so oftentimes the way we blend music, the way, what happens in an intro video when you see, when you come to a show, what you see in an intermission and the content that is on and off the screen, and what we say in the scripts that we have in moments in the show, those are all ways in which storytelling is like brought to life at the experience. And ultimately, it's really showing the connection of where R&B music came and where it is going. And bridging that gap is what we really like pride ourselves on in the experience. And we know that nobody can do it like us, right? So anybody can throw an R&B party, but not everybody can produce a DJ and host driven R&B show. And that is why we've been able to, expand and have the reach that we do. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have any ambitions? Because, the initial nugget that you shared of inspiration to kind of go down this lane happened overseas. Yeah. Do you have ambitions to go?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we've done a show in London, which was it was before the pandemic, so it was still big, but it's not what it could be now with how big we are now. We do shows in Canada all the time. Wow. But we're working on Australia stuff. We're working on some stuff in New Zealand. Working on some stuff in Latin America. We're working, but at the same time, expansion for us isn't necessarily in like global expansion of our live series is one thing, but there's other forms of expansion as well. Content, media, marketing, presenting other folks' tours, this kind of thing. Yes. These are all ways in which we look at expansion. So one element is global touring, and we will get there, but it is also the rules and regulations of what happens in other countries and just getting everybody to another country. It's a heavier lift in the live space than than like expanding your digital footprint. You know,
There's a lot more moving parts.
Yeah.
Now, with so many different events, I can imagine you going to all of those different events. And so, how are you managing that from afar?
Yeah.
Like, what does that mean?
So, in the building process, I was, I'm not only the CEO of the company, but I also host our, main event and live show. After, going on, before the pandemic, I mean like maybe a year, 2 years before the pandemic, I was doing the bulk of the shows, and, I was doing, there was years where it was 30 shows a year at first, then it was 40, then it was 60, you know what I mean? Or we were just getting to under 60, and then the pandemic hit. And, it's just not feasible to like run a company and then be, the talent on stage as well. And so I had to replicate myself, DJs that we had, but not only that, but we had to replicate tour managers. We had to replicate production people. We had to replicate VJs, people who, again, I said we invest a lot in visuals, and everything that you see on a screen from us is something that we've created and that we own. We had to find the right production partner for a lot of the equipment that we were bringing and stuff like that. So it just was a hiring process, right? And we finally are at a point where now we have, just under 30 people, mixed between contractors and full-time employees on the team. And we have enough to, we can do New Year's Eve, we did 5 shows in one night. Yeah. So, we're at a, that was a journey, but it was really just about finding the people that reminded me of myself and that wanted to do something different, wanted to do something unique, wanted to be surrounded by other people who demanded like excellence. And, we found those folks, and we're growing still, so we're always looking for more. And now I can focus in the office, but I still am on the ground. I still do shows. I still go to shows that I'm not doing and give the other folks feedback. You know what I mean?
Because it's a product that you cultivate, and you always got to have those inputs and pour back into what you're growing, right?
Yeah.
Folks don't know, right? They're doing their best, but you're like, you got your vision. You want to make sure it stays with what you built from the ground.
And as well, to that point, other people come on the team and they expand what that vision even is. There's so many things with the show now that, the show is constantly evolving because we can't just every year do the same thing, right? So we're constantly evolving. The show changes, sets change. We have 5 DJs. We have 5 different hosts. Not every R&B only live show you go to is going to be the same. The ethos is the same. The goal of the show is to take you on a journey of R&B music from past to present in a very unique way. But how that is executed is very different from show to show. And so I think, when we look at like who's there and who has input in it, what I found was surprising was that like so many core elements of the show and stuff like that have been added to from a production person being like, hey, there's some downtime in the show right now, and how can we entertain people before the show even starts? What if we put like trivia on the screen, like in like R&B questions or facts around culture?
Like when did this album come out?
Yeah, exactly. That type of stuff.
What did they sample on this song?
So like when there's like the doors, between the doors in the show, like we have that going on. Then it's like, well, we need more hosts and DJs, and we're trying to find them and we're trying to train them and all that. And then we just said, well, why don't we just have like an opening host and DJ and then the main host and DJ come on? And that way we put them through a training process so that when they get off the stage, all they're doing when they go on a tour, they're just watching and they're watching and they're watching. And now at a certain point, they'll be ready to hit that main stage. And these are things that didn't come from me. They came from the team and the people. Yeah, you know what I mean? And so, but it's really impacted the business, man. And it's impacted talent development and talent retention, which I really am happy about.
Man, it's incredible just to hear your journey and what you've been able to build. Like,
Thank you.
Just like the idea of like really going after what you were interested in from a very young age and still staying in that pocket, but allowing yourself to try and explore different things, to try stuff that didn't work and really know kind of where you want to go. I wanted to ask you one last question, which would be, what's your advice for, young folks coming up that want to get into the live event space, that want to get into the music space, and they're kind of navigating that, do I work in, the corporate environment or, do I go at it as an entrepreneur? What would you tell them?
Well, I would say if you want to get into the live space, make the barrier to entry low at first, because the live industry is very different than others, right? Committing to watching a Netflix series, low commitment. I can watch it whenever I want. I can watch it on my phone. I can watch it at home. I can watch it in my underwear. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have to do much but have a Netflix subscription, turn it on, and I can watch it passively. The live industry is so different than any other industry because the commitment is not just in a ticket purchase. You got to know what type of fit you're wearing. You know what I mean? You got to know who you're going with. Mm-hmm. The average of, when we look at our ticket sales as a whole, the average order amount is like 1.97, which means that on average, 2 people are attached to every single order, right? And that means that, you got there's a lot of coordination when it comes to committing to a live event. So, a lot of young live event producers, they come to me for advice, and I always tell them, hey, don't think that having free events at first is a loss, because you got to retrain your mind to think that somebody has done all this stuff to just get to your event, right? So they've gotten their friend, they've gotten an outfit, they've gotten their car, they've paid for an Uber or something like that, and they are physically with you at the time that you said for them to be there, not on the time that they chose to, right? Like, and if you're smart, you've gotten a way to communicate with them in the future. So you've gotten their email, you've gotten their phone number, and maybe you've even gotten some demographic information. Maybe on your RSVP form, you have a little bit more than just name and phone number. Maybe you have their gender. Maybe you have a clothing size or something like that. So, it's these type of things that you got to look at that are building your audience and is another form of payment in our unique industry. So that would be the first thing. It's like, don't rush to have a ticket selling event. Build audience first. And then, eventually, if what you're providing is good enough, they will pay for tickets at some point. Yeah.
Oh, man. Jabari, thank you so much for the game that you provided here. We appreciate it so much, man.
No problem.
And best of luck as you continue to expand.
Thank you.
And definitely bring R&B Only to Portland.
Oh, it's coming to Portland. No doubt about it, man. No doubt about it. And you will have the first invite, man.
I appreciate it,
for sure. Yes.
Thank you.
My brother. Thank you.